All right, guys. So this is the Jumpstart call, the group Q&A call number 1 for week 3. So this is you guys' opportunity to ask questions, to follow up on your experiences out in the field for our first canvassing day, as well as to talk about the webinar that I did for you guys last week, if you guys had any questions about that. So the floor is open, and this is all about you guys.
Okay.
We had somebody new who just joined us. Who just joined us?
It's Alma.
Hey, Alma.
Hey, Alma.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you. And you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome.
I need to mute myself because I'm in a kind of a public place.
Cool, no worries, Alma. I was just saying we have Chris and Kim on the line. I was just saying that, for this group Q&A, it's all about them asking any questions or sharing any experiences that they had out canvassing in the field, and to go through and ask any questions they may have had about the webinar that we did last week. So I think Chris was just about to ask us something.
Yeah, I was kind of confused a little bit, and I in talking with the other groups, apparently they were, if I understood them correctly, they were actually knocking on the doors and trying to talking to people directly when they were talking. And I thought when we were doing it that the direction was just if they're there, talk to them. If not, no big deal. We're just putting the flyers in the doors. So I was wondering if I did that wrong, like initially. Because I was just kind of like passively, as people were in the neighborhood, I was just kind of passively talking to people. And the ones that were out, it was kind of cool. And in one instance, somebody actually met me at the door and wanted to talk to me. But I wanted to make sure that, like, did I hear correctly when the direction was given, that it was just like, this is just putting flyers on the door, and if somebody's there, talk to them. If not, no big deal.
You're right. So for the first day, the big point was just to get you guys out there and used to putting the materials at the door. That was the first thing. So if you saw anybody or if anybody was obviously home, then talking to them is definitely the right thing to do. But I thought as a warm-up, since most of you guys have never done it at all before, that just the experience of getting out there and putting the pieces at each house was a good first step. And then the next time we go out, we'll be focusing more on actually knocking on the doors and talking to certain people and talking to people. And then by the end of the course in the canvassing, we'll actually be prepping you guys on how to prepare to go to targeted homes and talk to specific people. So I wanted that progression, and it doesn't matter. Doing it either way absolutely works. There's nothing wrong with doing it either way. But for you guys especially, a couple people in the group have already gone through the Quick Start program, so they have a little bit more experience than you guys, you guys were brand spanking new that first canvassing day. So they already have just a little bit more of a comfort level and understanding of the process, from the real estate side. So there's nothing wrong with doing it either way. And here's the thing: the more aggressive you are, and I don't mean aggressive in a mean way, but the more out there you are, the more you talk to people, and you guys had some great experiences, the more likely you are to come across a lead and get people talking about you. So to answer your question, yes, that was the direction. But if anyone just knocking on the door and talking to as many people as they can, that's exactly where you want to build to.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
The next question I had on the webinar itself was being able to pick out, and maybe this will be something that's addressed later on. You touched lightly on being able to choose your pieces that you're going to use in a strategy you're going to use in a neighborhood. And I was wondering, one, what the criteria, how do you come to the numbers as far as being able to pick out, like I heard you had 50-year-old houses, single-family homes, not as many. You go to the library or the post office to get the mailing routes, and then look at the demographics in that. But within that demographic area, how are you determining, when you and Elma were deciding which areas to look at or area to look at, that you determine the area based on, because I know there had to have been something more than just the demographic, or was that just it? You picked it based on it was 50-year-old or over 20-year-old houses, single-family homes with a demographic, with the age demographic and the work demographic.
Gotcha. Okay, that's a really good question. So it's not. Did you guys get that first handout that we sent that gave you just a little bit about the neighborhood?
Yes. About
Lanham Seabrook? Okay. So here's the thing. PG County is a really large county, as you guys know. And we needed to really hone in on an area that makes sense for what we wanted to do. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. And at the end of the day, some of it is preference. In my opinion, a lot of it's all about the numbers. But at all times, it's all about the exit strategy. So what is it that you're looking to do and get out of these homes? So, for instance, Alma and I have a marketing client right now that we're working with, and one of the things that she's going to start doing is targeting high-end luxury homes. Okay, so when we plot out the next campaign that we're doing for her, we're going to be looking in very specific areas. Already, lots of areas are already out the door. District Heights, Capitol Heights, certain areas in Nakoke, like those areas are already gone. So we're already looking in specific places like Montgomery County or, like Rockville would be a good place for us to at least initially start looking. Parts of Bowie, parts of Upper Marlboro, where I live, there's, certain areas. So, but her exit strategy and what she's doing in her business, that luxury home market makes sense for her. For what we're working on, I think someone else just joined us.
I'm sorry there, Everett. This is Daryl and Dawn Bathelmi. Just got off the phone.
Hey, Daryl and Dawn. How's it going?
Yeah. Sorry we're late. We just got off the phone with Sherman. So.
Fun. All righty. So what we're doing there is actually, so that's what she's doing. But with this, we wanted to find a pure middle-class neighborhood. It was important to us that it had some main thoroughfares that had lots of businesses, basically bordering it. And we also wanted to make sure that the homes were old enough that there was a higher than likelihood, or it was more than likely that the homeowners who lived in that area had enough years in the home that they'd have equity in their houses. So that was really important to us. And then the other thing on top of that was we wanted to be in an area specifically where homeowners outnumbered renters, because we wanted the actual pieces. And let me add one more thing to that. We also wanted to pick an area where the homeowners actually lived in the homes, that there weren't as many absentee landlords as there are in a lot of other areas. Like if you go to a place like Capitol Heights. So that was our criteria going in. And we also wanted homes that were under the 300K mark as far as the ARV, after repair value. So that was really important to us. So when we started pulling neighborhood information, and Alma and I looked at several areas. We looked at Fort Washington. We looked at a few places in Hyattsville. We looked in, where else did we look, Alma? Fort Washington, Hyattsville. Hyattsville was a big one for us.
Yeah, closer into the district line. Mount Rainier.
Yeah.
Bladensburg, that area.
Yeah, and then what we found when we were driving, also keep in mind that one of the reasons that this class is we didn't want to spend a lot of time in the classroom and wanted to spend as much time out in the field is you really don't learn this stuff until you're out in the field, right? And you actually feel the neighborhood and see the neighborhood, and you're out there several times. And one of the things that we found, and I'm glad you said Mount Rainier, is Mount Rainier and Bladensburg. We really spent a lot of time in both of those areas, and they're both great areas. But when we actually physically got out in those areas, and we did it on sunny days, rainy days, one particular really crazy rainy day. But what we found is that though there were homeowners, a lot of homeowners there, the issue was that it was a very heavily Hispanic area. And not that that's an issue for us, but neither Alma or I, though her name is of Spanish descent, speak Spanish. So what we didn't want is something that we experienced about 2 years ago when we first started doing this, is to get out in the area, spend money, spend time, and have people out in the field with us and knock on a majority of doors where the people didn't speak English. So one of the other main reasons we ended up, once we looked at the other factors, going with Lanham Seabrook, is there was a majority of the people living in the area were English speaking. So that was important to us, because we even tried in one area, we tried to do the whole one side of the marketing material was English, the other side was Spanish. Right. And that was awesome because we were getting, people calling. But then the problem was we didn't have anybody to take the calls. And poor Alma and I were like, oh, well, hold on. And then we found somebody to kind of help us. But it was a little bit of, it was just too much. So when we're picking areas, you're picking them for those particular reasons. Here's another thing to think about. As you build a buyer's list, your buyers will start to tell you, I am looking for houses in this range that meet this specific criteria in this specific area or these two areas. And if you know that you have a serious cash buyer, not a wannabe cash buyer, and generally at this point I'm talking about buyers with a track record, they've bought a few homes, they're currently working on homes, and this really is a business for them, then the savvy wholesaler at that point is going to, or even someone who's looking to buy and hold, who may not be in a position where if they got 2 or 3 deals, may not be in a position to do all 2 or 3 of those deals, might want to focus on an area where they know that they have 1 or 2 serious buyers who will jump on a deal if they get it. So that kind of becomes the criteria, what you should be looking for. And again, it's your exit strategy. If you're looking to wholesale the property fast, you want to go where the buyers are looking. If you're looking to buy and hold, then you want to go to an area that's going to fit with your long-term model. And not every area is going to necessarily be good for that. The first tenant that I had in a house of mine was an absolute disaster. And I learned a lot from that, and Alma actually, helped a little bit with that as well. But, it was an absolute disaster, and a lot of that was just pure demographics. So, now I've learned how to deal with the way we look at things, and for projects that Alma and I are doing outside of the wholesaling realm, we're really considering those particular factors. In Lanham Seabrook, so you guys know, our exit strategy in this area is wholesaling. Unless we come across just an amazing deal, our exit strategy for this area is wholesaling. So the criteria that I mentioned in the presentation is, something that fits in that criteria. And we also know that we have specific buyers that will jump on anything if we can fit it within the criteria that I mentioned. That answer your question?
It answered in full.
Cool.
I had other questions, but I'll hold the floor to anybody else who had questions.
Cool. All right. Anybody else?
Nothing? Tumbleweeds? Really? Come on.
We don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Now, building is there a specific strategy? Well, actually, first question, piggyback off the Hispanic speaking demographic. Now, if you were able to find someone who is fluent in Spanish, would that be is that still a good feasible demographic to go after as far as the strategies that are in place? Say you do a marketing piece that's Spanish and English, double-sided. Is that still something that's viable, or you just didn't have a good handle on it because you didn't have somebody to speak Spanish?
Yeah, our issue was that we didn't have anyone that could do the follow-up. The first day that we were out there and we started that campaign, and this was in Hyattsville what was that zip code? I don't remember the zip code. It was
84.
Right. Which one?
84.
Yeah. So what we found out was the first day we did not have the Spanish stuff ready to go at all. In fact, the first day, and this is something that you guys should be aware of because it's something so goofy, and this is totally my fault. We actually had the wrong number on the marketing materials on the flyers. We had an 800 number instead of the 888 number. Something very minor, but so little things like that matter really fast. But but lesson learned. You never ever do it again, right? So, but that area. So what we ended up doing is Alma has a good friend of hers that she's actually mentored for years, and both she and her daughter are Spanish speaking. They're bilingual. So what we ended up doing was taking our marketing materials to them and had them translate it into Spanish for us, and then we got back out in the area. So our goal at that point was to have the young lady on board with us to take the calls. But what would happen is we would get a phone call, which is great. Our Spanish is worse than my nephew's English right now, which is non-existent. So, so then we'd have to get just enough so that we can get them to hold the phone, so that we could then get the young lady on the line to do the conversing for us. And that just for us personally, it got too wonky. It was just too much. And then what ended up happening, because the young lady wasn't working for us full time and we couldn't control what time a call actually came in, it started to slow down the process to try to convert. So on our end, not so successful. But that said, if you A, speak Spanish, or B, have a friend or family member that is very reliable, that you can have access to, that those calls can go to, even if they're doing the translating for you, then that's great. We just didn't have a consistent interpreter, I guess, to help us with that. So we chose to not do that. And moving forward in the campaigns that we've done and the ones we're currently doing, and a few that we're about to launch outside of this, we just don't even go there.
Now,
maybe one day we will.
Now, I'd heard about my next logical progression on that is if you had the person on standby, working part-time or whatever, and you had a 1-800 number, like a pre-recorded 1-800 number, where you had an English message and a Spanish message, where they could leave their name, number, and information, and then have, quickly segregate what was what, and then have the Spanish-speaking person call back. Do you think that would have worked, or it's just too much of a hassle?
Right. No, that's a good question. In this particular case, it wouldn't, because the young lady was, I don't know, Alma, how old was she? Like 15?
No, she's college age.
Okay. She's college age? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
She looks really young. Okay. But in our case, that didn't work for us. If it worked for you, great. Here's the thing, though, that you want to keep in mind about dealing with the lead when it comes in. Leads get cold really fast. So when someone calls, you really want to be able to take the call when they call, and if not, get back to them within an hour or two. You really don't want a lot of time to go by, because what will end up happening is, and we're going to talk about this in the Anatomy of a Marketing Piece webinar next week, but you're positioning the pieces so that you're creating a sense of angst and urgency. You've presented a problem and you're presenting a solution all at once, but the solution is getting them to act immediately. You don't want them to wait too long to take action, because if they do, life gets in the way. So if you have it set up where the call comes in and you physically don't get the person, you could possibly lose the lead. And this is something, when we first started out, that we had that issue a little bit differently, where we were trying to do split testing, which I touched on in last week's webinar, and I'm going to talk about it in more depth next week. But we were doing split testing of marketing pieces originally by using extensions. So, 101 would be the door hanger piece, and 105 would be the other piece, like that. But what we ended up finding is that people didn't like having to dial the extension. So if they called in and had to enter it made perfect sense to us on paper doing this. And so we set everything up that way because we wanted to see where we were getting hits. But what would happen is people would call, and when they were prompted to enter a extension, they'd oftentimes just hang up or just be confused. So we realized early on, this is, again, like 2-ish years ago, that was not the thing to do. And so what we started doing is just doing the pure number, and we want people to be able to call and get to one of us, either get us immediately or get us, we have our system set up where it sends us a email and a text message if we miss the call immediately, so that one of us knows to call that number back. Okay.
Very cool. I know quite a few bilingual people, so it was a question that I had. It's just kind of like floating around in my head.
Well, here's the thing. If you have that access, that's great. You know, one of my two best friends she speaks 4 languages. So I would love to have her doing this, but she lives in Los Angeles. It ain't going to happen.
Right.
And she's a very, very good talker. So I would really like that to be the case, but it's not realistic for us at this moment. You know, that's something we could grow into. But if you can make that work, that's awesome. The thing, too, to remember is that you don't want to rely on them to do the sale. You want to have them doing the interpreting. So you still want to be available to actually be speaking with the person through your translator. The great thing, though, is when we were able to do that, people who speak Spanish from whatever descent that they may be, whether it's actually, I guess there's 2 different types, European and then Mexican, but
Yarno versus Hispano.
You're right. So, but the great thing is that unlike most Americans, people who speak other languages and live in America are generally really used to dealing with the translator if they need to speak in English and they absolutely don't speak the language at all. So if you have a good, competent translator and you can work with that translator, then that puts you in a good position because it opens up a market that, in this case, Alma and I aren't able to tap at the moment.
Okay.
And then if that were the case, I would give you a couple of zip codes and some specific streets and tell you to go work the heck out of them because there were some really great deals sitting out there in a few areas that we just couldn't tap into.
Okay. Very cool.
Cool.
I didn't have any. I yield the floor.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions about the canvassing or the webinar? Okay. Well, so you guys know, Alma and I.
Say that question again. We missed it.
Whoops. I'm sorry. Say that again.
We missed your question. Can you repeat?
Yes. No, I was asking, did anyone else have a question or just some comments about the canvassing or the webinar from last week?
No, but I have a question about just general lead generation.
Okay, cool.
You talked about getting, and this is Daryl Bathelmi, you talked about getting leads, when leads come in, attack them right away. What happens if you attack one right away, and for, say, the person wasn't ready at that time? Is there a certain amount of time you hit them back up again?
I'm sorry, the last part of what you said broke up. Say that again.
Would there be a certain amount of time in between the time you originally talked to an individual from when you actually return and call them back again? Say the person wasn't originally interested or had some other life issues going on. What is the time frame you would actually hit them up again? Say a week, 2 weeks, a month?
Okay, I think that there's a couple of different responses to that question, so I'm going to break it up. So if you've talked to someone and they've shown any interest at all, but maybe they're not ready to make a decision at that point, or oftentimes if they're a married couple or, they have a partner or just anyone else that's a decision maker in their household, I don't leave it open-ended. So I won't get off the call until we set a time to circle back. So generally what I would say is if I were talking to you and you said, okay, well, that sounds interesting, but I don't know, let me talk to my wife, or, I've got this other thing that I need to take care of, I would say, oh, that's great, Mr. Bathelmi. So how about we do this? What would be, how much time do you need to speak to Mrs. Bathelmi or to get that, to look into that situation? And generally the person will go, oh, well, they'll be home later on tonight, or I'll be able to talk to them on, Monday. And then I'll say, great, so let me do this. And I'll act like I'm pulling up my calendar, but I generally always have it at least minimized on my screen. And I'll say, all right, so how about we do this, Mr. Bartholomew? What if we set up a time to speak again on X date at X time? Would that work for you? And that give you enough time? Because that would give you enough time, right, to talk to so-and-so and yada, yada, yada. So you're telling them the exact date and exact time, and you're also wording it, phrasing it in a way that you're getting them to agree with you that it would be a great time simultaneously. So if they come back at you and say, oh, well, Monday's my bowling night, so I can't do 8 p.m., then you say, okay, great. What time would work best for you? I have this date and this date open. You don't want to give them too much latitude, because when you move into the selling side and not just strictly the lead generation side, one of the biggest things that you absolutely have to do at all times is control the conversation and control the action steps. And if you leave it to them to look in their book and figure out a time, what you'll often end up with is kind of a wishy-washy thing where they're not actually committed. And I always repeat the date and time at least twice, if not 3 times. And I make it a point, okay, Mr. Bartholomew, I'll be talking to you next Monday, the 23rd at 8 p.m., looking forward to it. And just to add another thing there real quick, Daryl, if you need to circle back because they need to speak with someone else, then I always say, first of all, you want to get in their face, if at all possible, instead of doing a phone call. At the point that they've called, you've had a conversation, and they're not necessarily ready to make a commitment to meet you at that particular time, or they need to discuss things with the spouse or whomever, you really want to be getting set up to see them face-to-face. That's really where the best closing happens. But if for any reason that's not doable, and the reason you have to circle back is because they're speaking to a spouse, and then what you definitely want to do is say, and Mr. Bartholomew, I would absolutely love an opportunity to talk to Mrs. Bartholomew. So will she be available Monday at 8 p.m. as well? Because, I would be more than happy to answer any of the questions that she might have. And then the last thing in that particular instance is you want to leave them with a objection, with an ability to overcome an objection, a typical objection that the person they're speaking with might have. So, in this particular instance, if, they need to go back and talk to another decision maker in the household, or they're just not sure, maybe you've already made them an offer, because you know the neighborhood, you actually maybe even know the house, essentially about what you're going to be at. You can also say, now keep in mind, Mr. Bartholomew, that what we're talking about, none of it is binding until we've actually signed a contract. And even then, you have a 3-day right to rescission. So it never hurts to have a conversation, and I absolutely would love an opportunity to speak with, because the person might say, well, what are you getting us into? What are you doing? You're selling our house? You haven't even spoken to me yet? So you want to leave them with some kind of objection overcomer, so that they have that kind of sitting in the back of their head. So when the spouse or whomever comes back at them and says, what are you doing? They can spout that out almost subconsciously. So hopefully that answers one part of the question. Then the second part would be, if you called them and they didn't answer, and you left them a message, or you called them and at that particular moment they absolutely just were not, they were clearly frazzled or whatever it is, then what you want to do is, I don't really like more than 48 hours to go by generally on a lead at all. If you've had any contact with them whatsoever, then it's best if you can get back to them within 48 hours. Now, if you left a phone message for them, and you're just, because they left a message, then you call them back, and now you're in the phone tag world. I would leave on the machine that, this is, Daryl Bartholomew calling. You called about, XYZ. Sorry, I, wasn't able to get you, but I will be giving you a call back tomorrow evening because if you call them during the day, say like the middle of the day, and you don't get them, I keep a little Google chart. So if you try them in the morning and you don't get them in the morning, then don't try them in the morning the next time. Try them in the afternoon or the evening, and so forth and so on until you get them. So then I would just say, so I'm going to be doing calls tomorrow, and I'll be giving you a call back at, around 3 p.m., and hopefully you'll be available then. If not, please feel free to give me a call or leave me a message with a time that will be suitable, because I look forward to talking to you about your home and answering any of your questions. I would do something like that.
All right, Everett, cool. That answered the majority of my questions on a situation I've been dealing with. So, thanks.
Great. Awesome. All right. Anything else, guys?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to talk to you guys about, some things that Alma and I have been putting together. This Jumpstart program is obviously our first time teaching this stuff to people, and we've been doing a lot of thinking about how we can streamline getting information to you guys, making sure that you guys have access to the webinars and this group call playback and all of that. So what we decided to do and have been working on all week is creating a membership site for you guys, not Facebook, an actual membership site. So all of this stuff, all of the materials, the forums, the webinars, the group calls, all of that's going to be made available to you each week, and you guys can go back and look at it at any time, including some resources that we're going to be giving you guys. So all of that is being built as we speak, and our goal is to have that launched by next Thursday, though I actually suspect, looking at the progress, that it'll be before that. And then you guys will get your login access information, and it'll be broken down by the week. So you can go back and listen to or watch webinar number 1 whenever you would like to. The forms that we handed out, there'll be a section for you guys to download all of those forms. And a bonus that did come with the class was the Six-Figure Man, Conversations with the Six-Figure Man, Howard Johnson, and the Secrets to Short Sales to Wholesale Success. So all of those modules, as well as a couple of ebooks, are going to be included on that membership site for you guys. So, neither Alma or I are the most tech-savvy people in the world, but we did feel like we wanted to make sure that there was a more easy and cohesive way for you guys to get all the information, because I've noticed that not everybody is in the Facebook group all the time. If I drop, like, the link or, a thing, and I've also noticed that not everybody is opening the emails that are going out from the New Deal. So hopefully this will be a good way for you guys to have everything in one central location and be able to view it at your leisure. So as soon as that's done, which will be next week, you guys will all get an email, and it'll be posted in the Facebook group so you guys can get your personal access to all that information. So that is the update on our end for that. And then next week, we're going to be talking the webinar that's going to be presented to you guys, and all of these are going to run about an hour, these webinars, give or take, is going to be on the anatomy of a marketing piece. And so we're going to talk about the pieces that you guys have already used, and then I'm going to also have some examples of just other marketing pieces that aren't necessarily going to deal with real estate, but as a way to show you guys how what you're learning in this class about marketing and lead generation transcends above and beyond strictly just real estate lead generation. But once you guys have gone through this course and understood some of those elements, you guys are going to have a nice, at least a good foundation to build from for how to set up your pieces. So I'm excited about that webinar, and so all that information will be posted in the Facebook group, and you'll get an email from the New Deal about that as well. And then, as I mentioned, all of this will be set up. The membership site will be done by next Thursday. So once the webinar is done on Thursday, it will go up into the membership site as well, which will be private and only for you guys. All right.
Everett, this is Darryl again.
Hey, Darryl.
Did you do your data drill down and see which marketing piece that we delivered to the field works best so far?
We don't really know just yet. That's going to take us another maybe 2 weeks. What we are getting is we're getting the phone to ring, so that's good. Which pieces, we don't know. Something that I don't know if I mentioned this. I didn't mention this. I'm glad you said that, Darryl. One thing we learned, and this is again about why it's important to actually be out in the field, so you can learn the movements of the neighborhood, and you have to do it multiple times. You don't really get a sense. I'm sure everybody who's on the call who's bought a house, went and drove by the house before they bought it a couple different times, day, afternoon, night, weekends, to, figure out what kind of neighborhood you were moving into. But what we found out is that north of Lanham Severn Road up to where was that? Up to about Good Luck, Alma?
Yeah, Good Luck.
Yeah, up to Good Luck, they have a very active neighborhood watch. And when we went to pick up the signs again, poor Alma was getting stared down by the neighborhood watch, who were going around and picking up any signs that were on the corners. They didn't touch the signs that were in houses. And, I mentioned that to you guys, before we even got out in the field. And then we were in the field that if you find an abandoned home or a home that clearly no one is living in, and you can get a sign in that front yard, they generally last you for quite some time. So those weren't touched except for one that had fallen over, but it was clearly because the company that the bank, it was an REO property, the bank, whoever they sent out to cut the grass, just put the sign down to cut the grass. But other than that, those signs stayed, but the ones that we weren't able to get before Neighborhood Watch got them. That said, south of Lanham Severn Road, they do not have a heavy neighborhood watch. So that just shows you in a short distance how dramatically a neighborhood can change. But our signs that were put out south of Lanham Severn all survived, I think, with the exception of maybe one. So that's just something to really be aware of. And again, that's not the kind of thing, to go back to one of your first questions, Chris, that just from looking at the numbers or the demographics or anything like that. A lot of neighborhoods have neighborhood watches, but how intense, are they really? So now we know that putting up signs in certain parts of Lanham Severn or Lanham Seabrook, we're going to, be at risk of, some guys in black jackets, and yes, they were black jackets, picking up our signs, and signs are money. So that was a good lesson for us to learn, and I definitely wanted to share that with you guys as you start to look at and pick out your own neighborhoods.
And
all right.
Can I add to that?
Oh, please, of course.
When we were picking up the signs, the neighborhood watch pulled the signs that were in the interior of the neighborhood, like on the inner street. They did not touch the signs that were like on Good Luck Road when you first turn into the neighborhood. So,
good point. Yes.
When you look at an area, and that's why we talk about really knowing the main thoroughfares that lead into those neighborhoods, because when you the signs that were left in that subdivision north of Lanham-Severn were the signs that were at the main intersection, like on Cipriano Road, on Good Luck Road. The signs at that intersection, when you're turning into the neighborhood, they were still there. We were able to pick those up. But when you get into the interior of the neighborhood, that's where Neighborhood Watch was very active. And so picking out those main thoroughfares that lead into an area is critical, because they're not going to be as mindful of picking up signs there. As a matter of fact, I rode through maybe during the week. I left a couple of signs up, and when I went back just to check, they were still there, like signs in the middle of a what do you call it? In the middle of the road.
The median?
The median, yes,
yeah,
in the middle. And this one was on Lanham-Severn, and I think it was 94th.
Oh, yeah.
It was right in the middle. And when I passed by there during the course of the week, it was still there. So the really understanding what your main thoroughfares are around an area, and knowing the traffic patterns where traffic slows up an awful lot. People have time to look at those signs when they're going out of the neighborhood. Traffic is very heavy. You're sitting at that intersection. They've got time to look at a sign and write down a number. So really understanding those components are really critical. And we even had signs that went down as far as, I think, Route 450, and they were right at the intersection, very near a stop sign, leading out of the neighborhood, because as they're at that stop sign waiting, they can see that sign on the median or on the corner, near the stop sign or near the light, whichever it may be. So those are some of the key points to remember, to maximize, getting your signs back, or maximize the amount of visibility that you have with those signs.
Okay. And speaking of signs, we took last week off for Valentine's Day, obviously, and President's Day, and this weekend is the apprentice program, so we won't be doing a field day. But the following week, we do want to start up the bandit sign Friday, Sunday thing. It's really important because, again, you want to maximize the amount of time your sign can be there and minimize the possibility of your sign being snatched up by city workers. So we are going to be sending out a form, and we want everybody to, pick a couple of those Friday, Sundays that you can get out there, because this is absolutely something that you want to get used to doing, because this is what you're going to have to be doing for your own marketing campaigns. So we're going to get that form out to you guys. We'll have the information on the private membership site for you guys as soon as it's completed being built. And again, we have a webinar next week. That I hope everybody can be there for, and that's about it, unless anybody has any other questions.
Not for me.
Elma and Everett, this is Kimberly.
Hey, Kimberly.
I thought you all did an excellent job on the flyers and the signs. But in reference to marketing, what type of program are you using? And how did you come up with your design for your marketing material?
Oh, good.
You mean the program as far as physically the thing that I designed them in?
Yeah.
Oh, I literally, the 2 white signs are done in, because, I'm not technical at all. The 2 white signs I did in Word, and the yellow letter, I wrote that sign and then sent it off to Alma, because Alma is actually an artist, which very few people know. And
Alma.
Yes, and Alma took the words and made them look awesome on the yellow letter page. And then, and this we're going to talk about in the anatomy of a marketing piece next week. But the actual way we did this yellow letter is I wrote the copy, then Alma took the copy and wrote what you guys see on the yellow letter on a white sheet of paper. And then I worked with the printer, and that is actually something we'll talk about later on in the program. But I worked with the printer to do actual yellow letter paper and bought pads and pads of legal paper, real legal paper, to do that. What you often see, which I think is crappy, is people don't actually we'll talk about all this next week, but I could end up going on about that for a while. But yeah, so nothing fancy at all. Literally it was just Word. I'd like to think I could use Adobe Photoshop and all that, but I don't have hair, but I would pull it out if I did. So if I can do this stuff, you guys can definitely do this stuff.
Well, I am familiar with Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I just thought you might have been using something more advanced, but that's...
Oh, no, I'm not advanced. No.
You did an excellent job.
Well, thank you very much. I know Alma appreciates that as well.
It's called basic creativity. And,
yes.
When you have, and when you think about your purpose, and that we'll get into later, but what it is you're going to do and why you're doing it, that dictates how you do it, and then you can go from there.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So that's it, guys. Next week will be fun because it'll just be talking about marketing, which I love, but breaking down the different elements so you guys understand the different terms and things like that. So whether you're designing the piece yourself, you know what to look for. But I know a lot of people, will go to somebody to have them design it, but you want to make sure that you can be clear in how you communicate what you need so that you know that you're getting what you want and not some, creative person's idea of what it should be. So we'll be talking about all that next week on the webinar, and if there's nothing else, then that's it for the call. But definitely, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask now or post them in the Facebook group. All right, going once, twice, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Take care.
Bye.